Dr. Schindler, thank you for joining us again. Always appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Today is the 5th of September, 2022, and something interesting took place in Afghanistan today, and it's more than interesting, it was deadly. It was an attack on the Russian embassy. And I'm wondering if you can start us off. I've got a few questions for you, but if you could start us off briefly by telling us what you think happened.
Well, first of all, it's really important to understand that the Russian embassy is not quite in the center of town. So it's actually easier to protect than other embassies who used to be in what is called the green zone, Wazir al-Barkhan, which is the center of Kabul. The Russian embassy traditionally, which is a rather large compound, is a little bit further removed from the city center on a big road, and therefore easier also from a security perspective to protect. Nevertheless, there was an attempted suicide. Well, there was a suicide attack that killed a couple of Taliban guards and 2 embassy employees today in Kabul, which really hammers home the point that the Taliban continue to be unable to provide any kind of even basic security in the nation's capital.
Yeah, so it was, just looking at the operational aspect here, it was a suicide bombing.
That's what the Taliban tell us. It was an explosion outside the embassy. They were shooting apparently at something or someone. So, all that we can understand at this particular point is that there was indeed a suicide bomber on its way. But, details remain to be seen, but it looks very much like that.
Right. So what are your thoughts about who might be behind this?
Well, there's really only a very small group of groups that possibly could have done this. At the moment, I would think everyone's money is on the Islamic State Khorasan. First of all, the Russian embassy or the Russian presence in Kabul in 2022 is not the Russian presence in 1980 or 1982 during the Afghan war against the Soviet forces. The Russian embassy is currently seen as the Russian government is one of the more friendlier governments towards the Taliban. In addition to the Chinese, there were the only 2 nations that actually kept their embassies in Kabul open during the takeover, because they had been negotiating with the Taliban separately to the international community and the United States, and had received security threats. So definitely it's not the Taliban. But the Islamic State Khorasan province has been conducting a rather violent campaign, especially in the last 6 to 8 months, increasing attacks very regularly also in Kabul. One time aimed at really hardcore security officials of the Taliban government. Once, and I think we are discerning a little pattern here potentially, when the Indian government said it would reopen its embassy, a Sikh and Hindu temple were attacked in Kabul, close to the Indian embassy. So I think what the Islamic State is telling everyone here is, number 1, we are still here, despite what the Taliban claim that they've broken our back. Number 2, if you think about opening an embassy, think twice. They're well protected, considered friendly to the Taliban. Embassy of Russia, even that one isn't safe in Kabul.
Yeah, you've just covered 2 of the questions that I was going to ask you, one of which was why and what their message was. So maybe we can drill down a little bit into that, the why the Russian embassy.
First of all, it's really important to understand the Islamic State sees itself as the ideological competitor to the Taliban regime. They are criticizing the Taliban regime as not being Islamic enough, in inverted commas, as apostates. They now have also started to criticize Al-Qaeda because of the organization's very close symbiotic relationship with the Taliban. And therefore they say, we are the actual Islamic Emirate, and we are not content with just the foreigners leaving the country. We now want these apostates out of power. So they're really setting themselves up as competitors. And hence, they're trying at the moment what they have done very successfully in 2014 and 15 in Syria and Iraq. So the target priorities are security forces, number 1, ethnic minorities, in particular Shiite, Hindu, Sikh, who also live in small numbers in the country. Number two, to increase ethnic tension. And number three, any allies or any country that may seem open to a cooperation with the Taliban regime, see India and its trouble to open the embassy, and see today the Russian embassy.
So, and the messaging, back to that question, what message do you think Russia will take from this? We understand what you said, the Islamic State's message overall is, but what message do you think the Russians will take from this?
Well, I don't think because of one attack with relatively, like this could have gone much worse if the attacker or the attackers would have entered the compound, with relatively limited damage and losses, will not really force the Russian government to withdraw. They see this as a strategic relationship, getting their feet back into a geographically key location in the region. Don't forget, Afghanistan is at the heart of any route between India and Europe. It's close to the Persian Gulf. It's a very good place for the Russians strategically to be. So I don't think they will change their stance towards the Taliban government. They just had a Taliban delegation in Moscow a couple of weeks ago. So this will not change. They possibly will harden a little bit their security. I'm sure they're not quite as happy with the Taliban as they used to be a couple of hours ago. Because they could have been warned, it's now the Taliban's responsibility, and it clearly failed. But I don't think there is, at this point, a great shift in the Russian policy, which is trying to establish itself again in Afghanistan stronger than it used to be in the last 20 years.
All right. One very, I guess, rudimentary question here. Looking at the United States, what is it that the U.S. sees or should see here, and how will that impact any U.S. activity as a result of this attack?
Yeah, I don't think the U.S. is as determined or is discussing as diligently as the Europeans the question of reopening embassies. Now, there is obviously a very big problem with opening an embassy in the country. This means it's the first step to really recognizing this horrible, brutal, human rights violating regime as something of a legitimate government. The Europeans, however, have and continue to discuss the question of whether we should have, they say eyes and ears on the ground, as if this could only be done by an embassy, by the way, in inverted commas. Everyone should take the message. If the Taliban are not able to protect a easy to protect embassy of a nation which is very, at this point even friendlier to them than Pakistan, then what chance do you have to secure your diplomatic representation? Kabul remains at least as a dangerous place as it was before August 2021, when the Taliban took over. We have to be very, very security conscious, in addition to the political signal that any country sends that reopens its embassy. And there's a slow, slippery slope of governments reopening their diplomatic representations in Kabul in the last couple of months, none of which have been from Europe, many from Asia, Middle East so far. This is the wrong way. This is the wrong move. You're not safe, and you're not helping anyone with having that.
Hans-Jakob Schindler, thank you again, as always, for your expertise.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.